Welcome to our guide on navigating your post-employment health coverage gap using the COBRA 60-day strategy. In this video, we will walk through how COBRA works, why timing is everything, and how to use the 60-day election period to control costs while maintaining protection. We will gradually explain the retroactive nature of COBRA coverage, address common HR processing delays, and outline a practical, step-by-step plan to manage risk. Along the way, we will also include quizzes, diagrams, and a clear comparison of options to help you make informed decisions. Here is the agenda for today. First, we will define COBRA at a high level. Next, we will explain the 60-day election window and the critical retroactive feature. Then, we will clarify how HR paperwork delays do not shorten your eligibility period. After that, we will outline the popular wait-and-see approach to reduce costs. Subsequently, we will evaluate the risks and trade-offs. Then, we will build your step-by-step safety plan. Following that, we will test your understanding with quick quizzes. Finally, we will close with an important disclaimer and helpful resources. To begin, COBRA is a federal law that allows you to continue your employer-sponsored health coverage for a limited time after certain qualifying events like job loss. Usually, you pay the full premium that your employer used to subsidize, plus an administrative fee. Even though it is expensive, it can be essential protection during a coverage gap. Now, let us connect this to the 60-day election rule that makes timing so crucial. Here is the most vital feature. You have a 60-day COBRA election period. If you choose to elect within that window, your coverage is retroactive, back to the day your employer coverage ended. Because of this, many people delay enrolling and paying to see if a medical need arises during those 60 days. If something significant happens, you can elect immediately and pay all back premiums, and the coverage will apply retroactively to those days. Conversely, if no medical needs occur, you can choose not to elect COBRA, which avoids paying expensive premiums. However, this strategy only works if you do not miss the deadline. We will emphasize how strict that deadline is in a moment. This flowchart starts at the point where your employer coverage ends on day 0. First, it asks whether you have an immediate high-cost medical need. If yes, you would elect COBRA before day 60, pay the back premiums, and your coverage would retroactively apply to day 0, which means claims from that period are covered. If there is no immediate need, the chart directs you to monitor the situation during days 1 through 60. Next, it checks whether new coverage begins before day 60, such as through a new job or marketplace plan. If new coverage starts and you have no claims from the gap, you can skip COBRA and avoid the premiums. If new coverage does not start before day 60, the chart asks again whether any medical incident occurred during the window. If yes, you would still elect COBRA before day 60 to ensure retroactive coverage. If no incident occurs and you reach day 60 without electing, the flow concludes that you do not elect and save premiums, but it highlights a critical warning. Once day 60 passes without election, COBRA is permanently unavailable for that event. You usually cannot enroll in COBRA until your official separation date has passed. After that, it is common to experience a 1 to 2 week delay while HR or the COBRA administrator processes your eligibility and sends your notice. Those delays do not reduce your election window. Under federal rules, the 60-day period is generally measured from the later of the date your coverage ended or the date you received the COBRA election notice. Therefore, you should track both the actual loss of coverage date and the date you received the official notice. Then, confirm the precise deadline printed on your COBRA election packet to avoid any ambiguity. This approach treats the COBRA election window as a risk buffer. Rather than paying immediately, you wait and watch. If a significant medical event occurs during the window, you can elect COBRA before the deadline and pay the back premiums to activate coverage retroactively. If nothing happens, you can forego enrollment entirely and save substantial money. However, this is a calculated risk that requires meticulous calendar management. If you miss the day 60 deadline, COBRA is no longer available for that qualifying event. On the left, electing COBRA immediately provides instant certainty. It is ideal if you expect ongoing appointments, procedures, or have expensive prescriptions because you avoid interruptions or reimbursement hassles. However, it requires paying high premiums right away. On the right, the wait-and-see approach can save substantial money if you have no claims during the 60-day window. You still retain a retroactive safety net for emergencies. but you must manage the deadline precisely. Additionally, some pharmacies or providers might require payment at the time of service until your coverage is activated, which can introduce administrative work for reimbursements later. This table outlines the practical timeline. On day 0, your employer coverage ends, and you should start your tracking calendar. During days 1 to 14, your HR or COBRA administrator typically processes your notice, so be on the lookout. Around day 30, assess your health needs and consider alternative coverage options. Around day 45, new coverage from a new job may begin, and you should evaluate how that affects your COBRA decision. On day 59, perform a final check-in to decide whether to elect or skip based on actual events that occurred during the gap. Finally, day 60 is your election deadline. Ensure you understand submission methods, payment requirements, and cutoff times stated in your packet. To implement this strategy, start by marking day 0, the date your employer coverage ends. Next, record the date you receive your COBRA election notice, and verify the exact deadline printed in the packet. Set at least 2 automated reminders, one around day 45 and another on day 58 or 59. Make a list of providers, prescriptions, and any expected medical procedures so you can quickly decide whether COBRA is necessary. If a significant medical event occurs during the window, elect COBRA immediately and pay the back premiums to activate coverage retroactively. If no events occur, allow the window to pass and forego COBRA to save money. Finally, keep thorough documentation of all dates, notices, and any payments. Quiz time. You lose coverage on May 1st and receive your COBRA notice on May 10th. When does your 60-day election period end under federal rules? Is it 60 days from May 1st, 60 days from May 10th, 30 days from May 1st, or 30 days from May 10th? You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is 60 days from May 10th. Under federal rules, the election period is measured from the later of the date coverage is lost or the date you receive the COBRA election notice. In this case, the later date is May 10th, so the 60 days are counted from that date. Here is another scenario. It is day 45. You have had no medical expenses, and your new employer coverage begins on day 50. What is the most cost-efficient move in many cases? Should you elect COBRA now and cancel on day 50? Wait, and if no incident occurs, avoid electing COBRA. Elect on day 60 just in case, or pay 1 month of COBRA to stay safe. You may pause the video now to think. We will reveal the answer in the next section. The best answer is to wait, and if no incident occurs, do not elect COBRA at all. Because you had no claims during the gap, and your new coverage begins on day 50, electing COBRA would likely require you to pay back premiums for that period without providing additional benefit. By not electing, you avoid those costs. Let us cover a few nuanced points. First, COBRA rights often apply separately to each qualified beneficiary, which can include dependents. Second, pharmacies and providers may require payment at the time of service until your COBRA coverage is activated. Therefore, retain all receipts for potential reimbursement once the coverage is backdated. Third, you may qualify for a marketplace special enrollment period and should compare premiums, deductibles, and provider networks against COBRA. Fourth, some states have mini COBRA programs for small employers with different timelines, so always read your specific notice. Finally, remember that retroactive coverage hinges on completing your election by the deadline and paying all back premiums. This mind map centers on the 60-day COBRA strategy. One branch focuses on dates and deadlines, including day 0 when coverage ends, the notice date, a day 45 reminder, and the day 60 cutoff. Another branch maps medical needs, such as ongoing care, prescriptions, and emergencies. The costs branch highlights premiums, back pay obligations, and potential savings if COBRA is skipped. The alternatives branch covers marketplace enrollment, new employer coverage, and possible Medicaid eligibility. Finally, the documentation branch reminds you to keep notices, receipts, and explanations of benefits so you can reconcile any retroactive claims. Here are the most important points. First, the 60-day period acts as a risk buffer. Second, retroactive coverage only applies if you elect and pay within the deadline. HR delays do not shorten your window, but you must confirm the precise deadline on your notice. Fourth, if no incident occurs during the window, skipping COBRA can save substantial amounts. Finally, missing day 60 means COBRA is no longer available for that qualifying event. Before we wrap up, please note that this content is educational and not financial, legal, or medical advice. You must read your own COBRA notice to confirm your exact deadlines, premium amounts, and payment instructions. State-level mini-COBRA rules and administrative practices can vary. You may also qualify for Marketplace special enrollment periods, or Medicaid, so compare costs and networks carefully. Additionally, some providers may require self-payment until your coverage is activated. Therefore, keep receipts for possible reimbursement. If you anticipate procedures or require uninterrupted access to medications, enrolling sooner may be the safer choice. This timeline lays out the journey from day 0 to day 60. It starts with coverage ending on day 0. During days 1 through 14, HR or the COBRA administrator processes your notice. Around day 30, perform a midpoint review of your needs and expenses. Around day 45, new coverage may start through a new employer or marketplace. On day 59, conduct a final decision check. Day 60 is the election deadline. The diagram also notes that if a medical incident occurs at any point before day 60, you can still elect COBRA and pay back premiums to retroactively activate coverage. In summary, COBRA can bridge your health coverage gap, though it can be expensive. The 60-day election window gives you leverage to manage risk and cost. Retroactive coverage is a powerful feature, but only if you meet the deadline and pay the back premiums. Therefore, track every date, set reminders, and keep thorough documentation. Finally, compare COBRA against alternatives to decide what best suits your medical needs and budget. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you, please like it, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe for more practical guides at the intersection of health and money. What questions do you still have about COBRA or coverage gaps? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every one.